Jamie, I keep hearing people say God is searching for believers, that he's basically sorting humanity into the faithful and the failures. But when I read 2 Timothy 2:13, it feels like that idea collapses. What's actually happening in this verse?
You're right, Richard. This overturns that entire framework of tradition, really. Most people think God's faithfulness depends on human belief, but 2 Timothy 2:13 says the exact opposite of that. If we are disbelieving, he is remaining faithful, for he cannot disown himself. And, this isn't one of the most frequently highlighted texts in Christian teaching because they have a very difficult time interpreting it and working it into their doctrines.
So, what's the core idea? What is Paul actually teaching here?
Well, the central concept is this: God's purpose is inviolable because it is grounded in his own character. Human disbelief cannot affect what God has determined. It's about God being faithful to himself. And God is faithful to us since he is faithful to himself. That's why he is faithful to us. That's the only reason, because he's faithful to himself. See how that works?
But how does human disbelief not affect God's purpose? That seems impossible. If people don't believe, doesn't that derail the plan?
Well, God's purpose isn't to fulfill his intention with just a few people. Well, here's the conceptual points behind the verse. God's faithfulness is not dependent on human faith. God's purpose is not conditioned by human conduct. We don't affect his intentions, his purpose. They don't depend on us. God cannot act contrary to his own character, therefore, his purpose cannot fail. Human unbelief only proves the necessity for God's faithfulness. It doesn't prove that since humans are unfaithful, that God is only faithful to the faithful. No, human unbelief only proves the necessity of God's faithfulness. All people have some unbelief. Most people have a lot of unbelief. These aren't opinions, really. I guess they're the categories demanded by the verse itself.
So God's purpose doesn't rise and fall with human response?
Exactly. If God's purpose depended on human belief, it would never get uh, completed. His plan would be unstable because we're unstable. His intention would be reactive to us rather than proactive and a force, an immovable force. His operations would be contingent on us. Can you imagine that? Putting anything as a contingency on humanity. His goal would be vulnerable because we're vulnerable. And given the opportunity, we can see in Scripture and real life that we would deny his purpose for personal gain or comfort here in this age. God's purpose flows from his own character, not from human performance.
All right. But how does the verse itself prove all this? What does the text actually say?
Well, here's the full wording. 2 Timothy 2:13. If we are disbelieving, he is remaining faithful, for he cannot disown himself. This is the anchor of his purpose right here. He can't disown himself. He remains faithful to himself. It's the foundation that his intentions are built upon. It's kind of a theological earthquake for current doctrine where humans play this great role that God reacts to, but it's just saying he is faithful to himself.
So the verse isn't saying God stays faithful to us, it's saying he stays faithful to himself.
Exactly. Notice what the verse doesn't say. It doesn't say he remains faithful to us. It doesn't say he remains faithful if we believe. It doesn't say he remains faithful to the faithful. It says he remains faithful because he cannot deny his own character. God's faithfulness is self-referential. It refers to himself. God's purpose is self-based. God's operations are self-generated. So human disbelief cannot touch it. And again, he is steadfastly faithful to us, since he is faithful to his own character and intentions.
So, what does this mean for God's purpose? What does this verse reveal about the big picture, the whole plan?
Well, it reveals that God's purpose is nothing like the traditional idea of God is looking for believers and discarding the rest, that sort of thing. He's searching to see who will believe in him. If something needs to be supplied for his intention to be accomplished, let's say a faithful group of people, he will supply it. He won't be dependent on humanity. Here's the actual framework. God is not searching for believers, he is creating them. Belief is not the goal. Belief is a means God uses to reveal his character, his grace, his existence during these ages. So God's purpose is not discovery, it's revelation. His purpose isn't separation, it's reconciliation. So during the ages, separation is temporary, whereas at the end of the ages, reconciliation is final. So during the ages, we have judgment, right? We have correction. We have this contrast between good and evil and belief and unbelief. And there's only a few people on the earth today that realize salvation by the cross happened. And it's only revealed to part of the population, part of the creation. In the end, it will be the entire creation, the entire population of humans. And that occurs at the consummation, 1 Corinthians 15:28, where the stage is restoration, right on stage. Vivification, everyone's raised. Reconciliation, everyone's reconciled. And God becomes all in all. God's purpose is rooted in himself, not in human response. This is the direct implication of 2 Timothy 2:13. God's purpose does not depend on who believes. His purpose does not fail because many disbelieve. His purpose does not end in torture or destruction of the majority. Human disbelief cannot derail the plan because the plan is self-anchored. It doesn't depend on us. We aren't the anchor. He is the anchor. Not our faith, not our behavior. He is the sole anchor of his purpose and intention of God being all in all. And God's purpose unfolds in stages, right? Presently, we've got faith granted to a few people. Most people don't believe. And during the coming ages, we've got the contrast between good and evil since Adam and in the future. We've got judgment coming. We've got correction coming. And then at the end of the ages, we've got the consummation, the reconciliation of all, Colossians 1:20, and God all in all, 1 Corinthians 15:28. This is why human disbelief cannot interrupt his plan. The plan is settled by God, not unknown or yet to be decided.
Jamie, people say God's character demands justice, and justice demands hell. How do you respond?
Well, I think they mean retributive justice, not corrective justice, retributive. Paul never defines God's character as retributive justice. He defines God's character as faithful, self-consistent, and purpose-anchored. 2 Timothy 2:13 says he remains faithful because he cannot deny his own character. God's character demands faithfulness to his purpose, not eternal torment. Did he have eternal torment as his purpose? That's very unscriptural to say that. And if some end up in eternal torment, his purpose is not accomplished.
But what about justice?
Well, who in their right mind thinks eternal conscious torment is justice? We have a lot of seared consciences out there who believe in eternal conscious torment, but their consciences are seared. They're burnt off. They really don't fully consider what they're saying. True justice is rectifying. If a sheriff comes to town, he'll set the town right. And that's what happens. It's not eternalizing suffering. Judgment is only age-lasting. It's not eternal. It is temporary correction, not the final state.
So God's character doesn't demand hell?
That's a human trait. Humans demand hell or death or punishment endlessly. But no, God's character demands completion of his purpose, not eternal punishment. God's character demands reconciliation. God's character demands that he, God, becomes all in all. Hell forever would mean God's belima, his purpose and intention, fails for billions and billions of individuals. Paul says no one withstands God's intention. God reconciles all because he cannot deny his own character. Well, let's wrap it up here. God's purpose is to reveal his character, including grace, through believers now, in this age. And his purpose is to judge unbelievers during the coming ages. It's only temporary, it only lasts an age or two, and reconcile all when the ages are over at the consummation. Why does he reconcile all? Because he cannot deny his own character.
So 2 Timothy 2:13 isn't just a verse about God being faithful. It's a declaration that his entire purpose is unbreakable.
Exactly. That's the verse. That's the purpose. And that's the revelation of that verse and all of Scripture. Now, if you disagree with me on this, put it in a comment. I'm starting to get a few comments here and other platforms, and we discuss things. So put a comment down there. Or if you agree with me, put a comment down. Or if you wish you believe that. That would be a very noble wish to believe that sort of thing. So thank you for watching. And give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you can. And I'll see you in the next one.